Theme number 5, we're going to talk about technology as social change. So the previous one was a bit of history behind why engineering has become overly a scientific education and less issues dealing with the right side, the social and economic impacts and the practical applications, and why it tended to move toward the more theoretical and academic. So number 5, we're going to talk about technology and social change. So the impact of technology. We know that engineers play an integral role designing, developing, maintaining, managing technology. Now, one of the major themes of the course will be looking at medieval technology. I think that's module 2, week 2. Week 3 is modern technology, impact of modern technology on society. And week 4, 5, 6, we start getting into how engineering became a profession. But let's just talk about technology and its impact on social change and social activity. So the stuff around this box here. It's funny to actually have to say this, but it is a fact that technology itself isn't just a computer. It's the social change that that technology or that artifact or that technological system has on society. How we have gone from mainframes to micros, to mini to micros, to PCs, to handheld computers, etc. And how that's changing our lives and changing our whole mode of communication. Technology, of course, has a huge impact on society, but it's virtually ignored in an engineering education unless one takes a course on the history and philosophy of technology or the history and philosophy of science. It might get taught in the first year, but it's as one of the old mentors I had in industry said, it's grease gun education. It gets shot onto you and just slips right off. It doesn't stick. Because technology's role in society should be completely embedded in the whole education system, not just treated as a module. It should be embedded side by side. That practice and theory has a social impact. And so that's what you'll discover in this course, that there'll be a call for change for the whole engineering educational system. The other thing, there are many paths to solutions. Many paths to a solution. One of the issues of a purely engineering science education is black and white thinking, right and wrong. Answers. Because that's what mathematics tends to do. You derive the equation, you apply it, and out comes the right answer. Any different answer within plus or minus some tolerance or percentage might get wrong, would be marked wrong. The building won't stand. Of course, when we're dealing with social issues and cultural issues, political issues, economic issues, there are no right and wrong answers. There may be many paths where one has to assess the dollar impact, the efficiency of the solution, the impact of the solution. And one may have to, if the dollars aren't, if they're a big problem and we have to get the cost down, we may not get as efficient system. We may have less impact. And we may have to live with that. But merely focusing on the technical function without looking at all these other forces makes the engineer down the line when it comes to making policy decisions. So we want to move from black and white thinking to broad shades of grey and looking at different paths. Design is a social process. So one cannot design any complex technological system without seeing its end impact on society. And so this diagram, we'll be talking about this throughout the course of the impact of engineering with science and, of course, with technology. And our focus is going to be here, basically. The edge of science with a huge focus on this. So we want to see the engineer as a total system, design, build, not just the functions, not just functionality. We owe it to society for engineers to step up to the plate to deal with the social and cultural issues because they understand how the technology works. It is wrong that policymakers, lawyers, economists, people who know nothing about the science behind the technology, its design and its use, its function and its impact, who know it only through second-hand knowledge. It's wrong that these people should make public policy in a complex technological age. And as the world moves toward more complex technological systems, it's going to require engineers to step up to the plate and debate these future systems and how they're going to be used. So engineers will have to understand life cycle analysis, economics, impact, maintainability. How long does a power station last for? How long does a skyscraper last for? What's the impacts? Ethics, political impact. There are many times when career politicians, etc., put through bills, make changes in how society is structured, where to fund, what technologies to fund, without having any knowledge of the long-term consequences. Highways going through cities that are falling apart and find that if to change the highway will cost trillions of dollars, disrupt huge cities whose populations are 5 times the size they are when the highway was built. Why is this? Why did these things happen? Lack of foresight. And as we mentioned earlier in future work skills, foresight, 50 years, 100 years into the future is what matters. We're dealing with complex, very complex technological systems where the technical functionality is only one piece of it. I'll continue on this theme. Let's just get rid of some of this stuff. Thomas Hughes, who's a famous historian, just put him on the internet, wrote a series, Thomas Hughes, wrote a series between 1983 to 1987 on the electric generating system in America. And he basically explained, if you were to talk to typical engineers, they'll tell you the functional job they did at designing the electrical control system or the hydroelectric power station, etc. But few would be able to discuss with you the entire system, from the artifacts generators, transformers, distribution systems, switchgear, there's the manufacturers of all these different subsystems. There's the people that integrate them, the construction. There's the people that operate them, utilities. And all the way through it, I might add, all the way through it, it's engineering know-how. But most of those engineers that work for the generator, that's all they're focused on. And so how this whole complex system works and is designed in society is left up to policymakers that don't have backgrounds in the construction, in the manufacturing of these artifacts, or in the proving the basic science of how they work. You have banks that have to fund it. You have research to come up with the latest power generation methods to save money or increase efficiency. You have governments at various levels, federal, provincial, municipal. The hydroelectric system, you have the different generating elements. You have hydro, you have nuclear. Complex, massively complex systems. Thomas Hughes investigated this whole area to explain how these complex technological systems require different levels of skills. And in addition to that, you have the natural resources, the mines, the coal mines, natural resources, water, coal, etc. All in a complex system. Shouldn't engineers learn how this whole integrated system works? The political issues, the bank issues, financial issues, the social issues, and not just the pieces and the within it. Shouldn't engineers be taught to look at the whole architecture, the social, the political, and the economic architecture? Who's better qualified to know the impacts of all these technologies, from its scientific proof all the way through to the design and build and maintenance of it, than engineers who understand policy? These are all complex systems interacting. Total technological systems. 90%, 80% of the decisions to manage this are non-technical. And yet, we train engineers to be technical, 80 to 90%. When in fact, what matters and what helps society are non-technical decisions. So the idea behind this course is to look at a history, and there's some papers on transportation system, aerospace systems, electrical systems, lots of good academic papers written by historians. Then we will reflect some written by philosophers to look at, well, why do we do things the way we do? So the course is going to give you exposure to these various systems and histories. Another paper that we'll look at, it's a guy called Langdon Winner. Do artifacts have politics? In other words, 1980, Does a bridge have politics? Does an aircraft have politics? Isn't that a strange thing to think about? Why would a car or an aircraft have politics? Well, of course, cars have politics. Look at how through the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, once we got away from Henry Ford's black car, the old Ford car, we went into all the different colors, and then they created, the marketers and advertisers created a social structure. If you drive a Porsche, you're better than a guy that drives a Chevy. If you drive a Chevy, you're better than a guy that drives a Ford, and so on. And of course, they change around. But the whole system was designed around politics. It was not politics in government, but the politics of human affairs. So, of course, artifacts embedded within them are social messages and social issues. He writes a famous paper. It's not a good one. It's somewhat infamous, actually. It's all about a bridge built in Long Island. And the bridge was built low in order to stop black people going into a wide area on their bus. The black people were being bused. School children were being bused were being bused to school, black school children. And the white people in the particular area in Long Island didn't want them to drive through it. So the bridge, the name of the person, Robert Moses, the bridge was designed to be low enough that it stopped that bus coming through the neighborhood. So we will understand that the design of artifacts have political implications, some of them sinister. Who would say that the atomic bomb does not have political implications? While most people think that it was designed and built to defeat the Japanese, we now know, of course, it was designed and built to do that, but more so to tell the Russians that the US had an atomic bomb and that they would have to toe the line until they got it themselves. Most of the stuff I'm going to say. So the other thing is image of engineers as purely technical professions. Let's just take this off. The image of engineering and engineers as technical professionals is reinforced by professional institutions. And we have a whole section that deals with this, the rise of the professional institutions starting in the UK, then America. Particularly in Canada, where it's a license to practice, the PEng license. This particular license deeply reinforces the role of engineers as technical solution providers. Very few times will PEng engineers be asked for opinions on the social issues in the public domain. There's a public policy, Ontario Public Policy Institute, which is part of the Professional Engineers Ontario, addressing these issues. But the fact is, the license itself has a body of knowledge for each discipline, by discipline. And that body of knowledge reinforces technical competency, not social competency. Indeed, ethics is built into it and so on. But the competency as a social thinker, or cultural thinker, or as a policy maker is not embedded into the license. I'm not questioning whether it's right or wrong. It's just a fact that these kinds of licenses and qualifications reinforce the technical nature toward the science of engineering. The other thing as well, engineers by nature, and we will find when we study some of the research, engineers by nature do not like emotional entanglements. by nature, they're not interested in the public debate we see with career politicians and all the emotional issues that go with it. We'll explore why this is, why people who tend to have a scientific-sided education rather than a social science education or education dealing with public issues, why they tend to be more inward, why they're not really interested in emotional entanglements, etc. That's sort of way that's the philosophical questions that we will be asking. The other thing is that through the years, engineers have tended, in the social context, to be apolitical, not really interested in politics. Now, as a person that was trained as an apprentice in the UK, an aeronautical apprentice, and then a degree in engineering, and then working as an engineer, these, in my own case, are absolutely true, 100% true. I had no interest in watching political debates other than maybe in Northern Ireland where I grew up in the Troubles. But basically, for the most part, I would have been considered, and my colleagues, the guys that I worked with and studied with, all of us were of this nature. But why was that? Why did we become that way? Wasn't it part of this educational system that trained and educated us? Or was it nurtured within us? Or were we just born that way? I think you'll find actually that the educational system actually shapes the person. Nurture, yes indeed, we all come with certain traits, but education can dampen us or enlighten us. And if we have overly scientific with very little of this, we have a blank side to our thinking. It is a fact that females who care, they have a natural tendency to care about social impact. Stay away from engineering because it doesn't deal with it. They want to make a difference. You'll find that this is another trait of females. And it's why many of the foreign students, non-English speaking students, why many of them are engineers, because their society expects engineers to take a role in the social design of society. Where in the Western countries, engineers were typically produced for employers, for capitalism.